In this tutorial, you will learn how to add JWT authentication to your Angular web application. Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon from Galaxies.dev, back with a new Angular tutorial, and today I'm gonna show you how you can easily make your Angular application secure by using JWT authentication. We're gonna make real requests to my dummy API, and we're gonna implement a login with the latest features of Angular 15, which means standalone component and functional router guards. This will be a pretty cool example because it shows everything you need to understand about building your login and securing the inside area of your Angular application, as well as getting started a bit with Tailwind CSS. But that part is kind of optional. If you don't want to use Tailwind for the styling of your application, you can use, of course, anything else. The logic is still completely the same. However, we're gonna create this cool little example with a login form and registration, an inside area with the navigation, and behind all of that, the logic to load a token, to secure the pages, and even to have something like an automatic login in the end. If you want to check out the full source code, link below this video to Galaxies.dev. If it's already launched, probably it's still in the early phase, but very soon you're gonna get access to Galaxies.dev, all the tutorials, all the free courses and free material, and you can easily grab the code from GitHub. But for now, also make sure you hit the like button and stay subscribed for more videos coming in the future. But now, let's implement the Angular application. Alright, so let's start our user authentication example with the blank new Angular application. So run ng new to generate a new application. I'm gonna call this auth app. I'm gonna include a routing file, and I'm gonna use SCSS simply because I kind of do this for every Angular project that I start. Then we can open our editor of choice. I'm, as always, using Visual Studio Code, and if you ask me about the color theme, it's still the shades of purple. And I zoom in 4 times if you want to know everything about it. All right. In our new project, we then install a few dependencies. So this is required if you want to use Tailwind CSS. So to the development dependencies, we install Tailwind CSS, Post CSS, and Auto Prefixer. And additionally, I know that we're gonna need the forms package as well. So we're gonna install Tailwind CSS forms as well. Finally, we need to initialize Tailwind, which we can do with npx Tailwind CSS init. npx simply runs a local script. You could also install Tailwind globally, but not really necessary. To then finally configure our Tailwind configuration, just bring up the Tailwind config, and let's replace this by adding our content that should be scanned and the plugins, which is the Tailwind's forms, simply because we're gonna have our login form pretty soon. To wrap up the Tailwind implementation, we're actually rushing through this, but it's not really interesting. We're gonna open the style CSS and simply add Tailwind base, components, and utilities, and then Tailwind is already done. And we can confirm this by running ng serve. You can also add -o, how do I close this? To automatically open the browser once this is done. So here we go, here is our auth app. Looks pretty standard because this is the default here. So let's change this. And we're gonna change this by adding our own routes first of all, or better, let's say our own components. So we can generate new components. I feel like, are we right here? Let me check this out. Are we at the 4 zoom level? Because I always do zoom 4. Yeah, we are. Okay. ng generate or g component or c. So you could really make this ng g c if you wanted to. And then I'm gonna pass -- standalone as well, because we're gonna use the latest and greatest features of Angular in this one with standalone components. So I'm gonna put this under pages login, and I'm gonna immediately add a second one that I'm gonna call dashboard. So we're gonna have the login page. This will generate the 2 ovals here. We're gonna have the login page, and then we can navigate to the dashboard page. That is the whole idea. And we're gonna make this with a real API in JWT authentication, and storing the tokens, loading the tokens, registering users, everything. Okay. Once we got this, we can touch our routing, which is in the app routing module because we generated this in the beginning. So let's set up our routes. we can actually define this. Usually we can define it like this, right? And then come up with the new array, and first entry I'm gonna use the blank. First entry immediately wrong. In fact, this is not, you can use route. I think this is what I used before. So then it should say path. Do I get code completion? Yes, better, that's better. Okay, for the blank path, what I want to use is load my components. I'm not passing the actual component. I'm now lazy loading my component. Where do we go? No, not like that. Let's use the default load component. And we can use the syntax import our page. So the URL, the link is the path. Come on, it's not the link. It's login component. And since this is an asynchronous import, we use then. You could probably also use await in here, right? Yeah, but that, I feel like that line would look horrible. Let's stick to this. Then we got the module here, and we can just call it like this. So this is the new way of doing it. You don't need any kind of module for this, because if we check out the login component, we're gonna see standalone true. So with Angular 15, I think we're using 15, right? Yeah, with Angular 15, we still need to use it like this. I don't know if this is gonna change it like Angular 18, so if you come back at this tutorial in the future, it might have changed. However, we don't need to create any kind of module for these pages, and we can just add them like this. And we can do the same now for dashboard, and then we would have the dashboard component right here. I'm gonna call that path, of course, dashboard. So for now, we have our two routes defined, and to display the actual information, we're gonna get into the app component, because this is the page that is currently displayed. So what you see here is inside the app component with a lot of styling and a bunch of HTML. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna select everything and remove it and replace it with router outlet. So that simply means we want to render as the first thing our Angular router, and the Angular router will take care of displaying the right pages. So now we got login works, because this is the first entry that we display here. If I now navigate to /dashboard, we're gonna see that dashboard works. So we have our general navigation kind of figured out. We just need to implement it. So let's take care of the login, and probably we're gonna do this side by side to get a good feeling. Let's open this and that. And to build the login, we're gonna use a reactive form. And if you have used a reactive form before, you know that you need to import the reactive forms module. And because this is a standalone component, we got our imports right in here and don't need to touch any other file, which is pretty cool, right? So let's add a simple form in here, for which we're gonna use the form builder. So let's inject this private form builder, and then we should also add the validators from Angular forms. Cool. This is the starting point. We can actually also add two functions. So if we submit a form, we can actually handle both the submit and the creation of an account on this page. Usually you would have a registration page for that, but we're just gonna stick it to this. So now it's time for the UI. And with Tailwind, that means we're gonna have a bunch of fun. So I'm gonna bring in a few classes here and there simply because they're just so long. But we can start by surrounding our stuff and positioning it in the center. Also using justify center. I actually got, I think, a Tailwind, a Tailwind extension here that brings up those classes. So you're gonna find them under extensions here. Just search for Tailwind. Yeah, Tailwind. Yeah, that's the only one I have installed. Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. Pretty nice one. Okay, we'll get rid of that again. And let's close it. Gonna put in test, so that should already center our stuff. In the documentation, they had just like a little image up there. I'm gonna take my image from the Galaxy's Twitter profile. I'm gonna remove the test in here, so then we have it like this. You probably also want to have a bit more space to the top, so let's add a class using the full width. I don't know, sometimes it's not working with the IntelliSense. Sometimes it is and sometimes not. Strange. Maximum, so this is only important later. Maximum width, and then a bit of space. This is kind of important because that will give our page some more space. Okay, this is just the image. What we need as well is a form now, and we need buttons. So this is the starting point of our page. On top of that, maybe we're gonna add a bit of padding Y12. So then we have it a bit more down. And we probably also wanna have X padding, but let's wait for this. Let's see. That actually scales quite nicely. It's in the center, so that should be fine for now. Okay, for our form, let me bring this in. So here we go. The form looks like this, a bit of margin and a space. And on submit, we're gonna call our submit function. Because we're using a reactive form, we connected through the form group to our form variable that we defined in here. And then we can just attach the email and the password to the right input fields. So if we would get started, we can now just have a simple input field like this. For the email. Looks not too good. We're gonna probably change this a bit. However, we got our label for the email for screen readers, and we have connected our input form using form control name. The rest is really not related to Angular, but this part is related to Angular. This is more related to general HTML required autocomplete email, so it will put in the user email. And then we got a long class that you can check out on the written tutorial on galaxies.dev, of course. On top of that, we also need a second entry, which is just the password field. So you can have it really just like this if you wanted to. In fact, you don't really need anything else. It actually looks already good. For default login, you could pretty much get started with that. However, in my previous setup, I had an additional class here with a little shadow around all of this. So let's wrap both of these in this new div. And do we get the shadow? Yeah, I think it has a shadow. Let's use LG. Yeah, then it has quite a big shadow. You probably don't want a shadow that big, so that's why we had the small shadow. It's subtle. It's subtle. Okay, looks good. Now we just need the buttons to submit this. And we're gonna give this or make this a simple flex layout with a gap between the items. So then we could have like login, and then we could have register. And oh, oops, I think we're on the wrong div here. Am I still? Oh, I still should be here. Yeah, then we are at least here. However, those are next to you. Do we want to have them next to each other? Yeah, probably. Why not? Why not? We can keep them next to each other. So for the first button, I'm gonna replace div, and instead we're gonna use a button. We're gonna call this one create account. And this will now take up most of the space. But if we come up with an equal button for our second field, let's just copy this one. We're gonna see that those two gonna share the space. If we don't have anything else, Flex will just align this equally. You could set this up to have the one bigger, or in general, you could have them below each other. If we wanted to do that, we would use Flex row. No, I always mess this up, then it's Flex call. So if I had them ordered in a column, they would be below each other. By default, we're using Flex row, so they're next to each other and share the space of that row. And the gap is this tiny little space you see in between. So if I remove that, they would kind of stick together. Okay, anyway, we're not too much, this is not a complete Tailwind tutorial, so I copied this button styling really just from the Tailwind UI page. The first button will be disabled while our form is invalid, and on click, we're gonna call create account. This is important because usually the form has an ng submit set to on submit. So if you have any kind of button within the form, it will usually trigger this on submit. And we gonna use this on the second button, so I'm gonna set this type to submit. However, if you set the type to button, even within a form, it's not gonna triggering the submit function, and you can just attach your own click handler. That also means for this button, which I'm gonna call sign in, we will have the type submit. Okay, and that is fine. Now, if you also want to have like an SVG, I copied this as well, simply from the hero icons. So those are pretty nice icons you can use with Tailwind, and they always give you the SVG. So on top of our create account, or in front of create account, I'm gonna put this little icon here. Can we give this a bit more space? Because this is interesting. You can use the valid, how do you call this, keyword? Filter. I'm gonna have to look up the exact term. However, by doing this, you can specify how that button behaves if the form is actually valid. So right now, the form is invalid. Did I save this? Yeah, I think. So now I get a pointer out here, and then we get this effect. If it's invalid, I get no more pointer and nothing happens. So this hover effect only happens if the button is valid. And we're gonna add the same kind of thing to our sign-in button. So again, and then we got two nice little buttons here. Okay, let's try a simple example. Can we lock this out? Let's open the DevTools. On create account, it says create email and password, and on sign-in, it doesn't say anything. That's a good point. Let's see. Type button, type submit. It's disabled when the form is invalid. This button is interesting. Are we still inside the form? I don't think we are, right? So those buttons, I think they should be within the form. Where's the end of this? This is the end. This is the end, you know. Okay, let's put it into the form, because if the button with the submit is outside of the form, actually kind of doesn't make sense. Yep, now we got this right. So create calls create, sign in calls submit, and we have our general setup for this page. It is responsive, it kind of works low. Come on, if the page is too small, yeah, we could probably set up something for that. Let's see, if this page is really small, we should give it some kind of padding. Let's say for small devices, we're gonna give 6, and for large, we're gonna give a padding X of 8. So then we should at least, no, oh sorry, I didn't mean to move that one. Oh no, I don't give anything. Okay, so let's say padding in general. Yeah, now we do have something on all platforms. Now we have 4 here. We could probably break this as well. So if we wanted to do that, we could change this and say by default we're using flex call, and starting at, I don't know, MD or SM, we're gonna probably SM. We're gonna line them next. Hello? Oh, did I mess it up again? No. Okay, so we got them column aligned, and then we got this. I think there's actually another breakpoint. I think it's XS, right? Or nah, what's it called? Is it S? Is there any other Tailwind CSS breakpoint? Tailwind CSS, can I search? Yeah, breakpoints. The smallest, yeah, that's the smallest one. Okay, you could of course change the breakpoints. However, I think this should be fine. So we got this. By default, we got this set up. If we get too small, we still have padding, and it should work on every platform. And we got create and submit working. Great. That means we can keep on doing the real work, which is actually creating a little service. So let's generate a service, because in that service we're gonna make all the API calls and perform the logic to handle our JWT stuff. So ng generate a service. I'm gonna just call this authentication and take a sip of coffee. You know, it's just 9 a.m. when I record this right now, and I just had like a few sips of coffee. Please bear with me. But anyway, I think I'm doing good for it. Just a bit of coffee and 9 a.m. Not too bad, not too bad. Okay, service, authentication service. We also want another package, I just remember. We want to install the JWT decode package. Let's see if I can move this up. JWT, is it on GitHub somewhere? Yeah, JWT decode. A super simple package. This library doesn't validate the token. Any well-formed data can be decoded. Yeah, it's just for, it's really just a super small library for decoding. If you want to validate a token, you probably want to use another library. With TypeScript, is really just calling JWT decode, and it's as easy as that. So, where do we get started? Probably by creating a register functionality. So let's inject the HTTP client. Oh, if we inject the HTTP client here in the authentication service, we should also add it to the app module. So let's add the HTTP client module. I still don't have a snippet for this. I don't know, this is like the only import that's not working automatically for me. And Angular common /HTTP, and make sure you got that array right. Okay, we got it. Now I can also add it in here. Thank you. And then we can create our functions. So the register function and the login function. Login with email, gonna be a string. Password gonna be a string or an S string. Okay, and then we gonna return this.http. Did I call this HTTP client? Oh, that was not my intention. Always call this HTTP. This.http login is a post request to my very own API at developbetterapps.com. So I purchased that domain some time ago. There should be an API documentation somewhere. Yeah, here's the Swagger UI. Nice, I designed this nicely. There are a few endpoints we can use. And authentication is the endpoint to get a login. So we're gonna grab this. Can I just give the URL? Please give URL. FFS, come on. Okay, we got this. So api.developbetterapps.com auth, and then email and password. Okay, please make this a few lines so people can also read it. Perfect. So this should give us back some kind of information, and we're gonna add a little pipe block here because we wanna transform the output. So we get back any kind of result. No, we don't need brackets here, but here. So I'm gonna just return it again. Hello, what's the problem? Yes, add the import, please. Oh, come on. Why are you mad with me? Not enough brackets, I feel. Yeah, that looks better. So we got this login function. How can we trigger this? Well, we can just hook this up to our page and probably, well, let's just start with this. So this should be called here. I'm gonna grab the email and the password from this.form get raw value. So because I'm, by the way, defining the form up here. Since Angular, I think 14, it doesn't matter anyway, we can have strongly typed forms. So then the form actually knows that it has an email and password, and that's also why this works, because getRawValue knows that it will return an email and password. Okay, and then we can add our authentication service, private auth, service, this, no, I was too fast. This dot auth service login. I'm gonna send email and password over, and then something's gonna happen. So we're gonna subscribe here. I'm not gonna handle the result or anything right now, just like this, because then we should finally be able to actually test this. So this is, like, I think, my test account. Yes. Submit, and we do get back an expiry time and a token. So it's a really super simple API. There's not a lot connected to this. But it shows one thing, and that is we have managed already to build the UI, the form, the logic, and the service. And now we just need to piece together a few more things, and then finally, of course, secure our application, because that was the general idea here. Now, we could keep track of that token pretty easily in memory with just a value. However, we also most likely want to load a user when the page loads, because you don't want to authenticate your users all the time again. So in the constructor, I will very likely call not the title strategy, whatever it is, but this.load user, which will load a token from storage. So let's first of all define a little storage key here, so we don't have to type that string again. However, I feel like in some situations this is going to be an asynchronous operation, either because you're probably using something like Ionic, where you're actually making an asynchronous call to get something from the storage, or you might want to validate something. And in general, I feel like it's more secure if we define our token in the stored local value on a behavior subject, where we can just emit new values once we get them and then just react to the changes, instead of having just a static value and then probably some race conditions if we later introduce the guards to protect the pages. So therefore, let's add a private user, which is of the type behavior subject, and then let's add a little interface. So we're gonna define that a user data could look like this. So we'll have a token and an ID of the user. The ID comes simply from decoding that token. So the behavior subject will either have user data or null or undefined, and that's very important because I'm going to initialize it with undefined. New behavior subject undefined. Now, why do I do this? We're going to see later. Yeah, it's not right. We're going to later see that I'm going to filter this initial value out, which is like the placeholder for the loading state. So undefined simply means we're not yet sure. It's like the Schrodinger's cat. So maybe user is authenticated, maybe not. We don't know at that point. We need to look into the box. So let's look in the box. On login, we now want to store that token. So we will be able to retrieve it next time. And we're going to do this in our map block here. In fact, we're going to slightly change the result. We could also use a tab block. Doesn't really matter too much. Okay, let's start with local storage set item. We're going to set it to our user storage key, and we're going to set the token, because we've seen token is here in the response under response.token. So this will first of all store the token. Then we're going to decode it using JWT decode. Oh, you can't import that automatically. Come on. JWT decode imported. It's just 1.4 kilobytes. Really, compared to everything else we're using, that's just a joke. So decode our token, please. And then I'm gonna add a little block here. So we're gonna lock this out as well. Once we got the decoded token, we can actually create a new user data object. So we can also use user data. And that's gonna look like this: token our token. Oh, but what will this return, by the way? Interesting. Nothing real. So we're gonna use the token, and for the ID we're gonna use decoded dot. I think the only thing we get back at decoded, I don't get back anything here, is of the type. Yeah, you can add for the token. You could add a certain type of the token. Is it a JWT payload? Let's try. JWT payload. Is it really? I don't know. Yeah, I should probably then remove this line of any. Yeah. Well, nah, it's not everything included, I think. At least I think so. But the sub should be included. Let's try it first of all. So on login, we should probably lock the decoded state. What's your problem? Is not assignable. Private user data, null undefined. Do I have to repeat that line? Okay, no problem, TypeScript. So on login, we say submit, we see result, and this is, okay, I get back IAT and a sub. I could even include that as well if I wanted to, but I know that the sub is really just the user ID in the system of my dummy API. We could also keep track of the expiry time, but we really want to focus on the protection of our pages pretty soon, so let's keep it at this. Now the important part is to say this.user next with our new information, and then it doesn't actually matter too much what we return here for our view, because the login will just go to the inside area after we are done with this. Now, the registration is actually pretty easy. We do the same call to our API just to register. And after the registration is done, I'm gonna use a switch map block, because with switch map, I can switch to a new observable. And what I wanna do is I just pass the information that was passed to register to login and then perform the login, because I don't know. If you don't have any kind of email confirmation, you can just directly log in the user at that point, which I don't have in this system. Now, the only thing is that at this point, we're not yet loading our information. So let's do this. We can load our token in the user function by grabbing it from local storage. If we do have a token, we're gonna decode it just like we did before. Can I grab that line? I'm gonna actually grab everything from here, right? Only thing is I'm just gonna decode the token. The token in this case is, yes, the token. So we're just keeping it in memory in case we need it to like include in headers of future calls. I'm gonna emit the new user data. And in the case we haven't found a token, so here in the else case, I'm also gonna call this, but with null. So that means we have skipped the undefined phase. And now if anyone checks, we have a certain value. So we can always filter out this undefined state, because this simply means our app is not yet initialized. And this is going to be really important for our logic in the end to protect the pages. Now, just 3 more functions that we're going to add, just little helper functions. So we're going to have a sign out, which removes our token and sets the user back to null. A helper function to get the current user. So we get it as an observable of our behavior subject, because the user is private. Nobody from the outside of this service can change it. And we just get back the observable. That's a secure pattern. And then we also have a function to get the current user ID. Well, it's not super secure if the user is null. You shouldn't probably call it. But I know I'm just gonna call it when the user is set. So that should be fine for today. Okay, let's hook up all of this to our functions. So for the login, I'm gonna change this a tiny bit. Usually I would have something like the value here and then the function. However, if I want to implement this in the new kind of way, I would actually pass in an object with next and error. It's like the cool kids doing this stuff. So next, in that case, I'm gonna do just let's just put a login done. And then I'm gonna route forward to the inside area. So let's inject the private router here, which is the Angular router. Maybe making this a bit bigger, and then just calling this dot router navigate by URL, and I'm gonna go to the dashboard page. In the error case, well, you can add some kind of like toast message or error or whatever. I'm just gonna lock the error for now. Or we could set it to our local error. So this dot error equals login failed. Sad smiley. Yeah, sad because I can't even spell this correctly. Okay, on create is pretty much the same now. I'm gonna remove that, and we're gonna call register. Yeah, register does the login for us as well. So I'm gonna call register done. It will do the same, but the error will be registration failed. And now we just need to find a place where we could add our error to the HTML. Where do we display this? I don't know, below the buttons, just in case something goes wrong. I don't know where I added this before. I think, yeah, below the buttons, something like that. Are we done yet? I feel like we're done. Let's try. I'm gonna actually create a new account. Let's call this b@b.whatever. I'm gonna call create account. This creates the account. We get back a result, register done, and we're on the dashboard. Great, good news, everyone. Can we confirm that on reload we got a token? Yes, we can. So let's try. Okay, we're not injecting our function, so it's not even loading the user yet. But if we go to the dashboard, we can quickly fix this. Let's inject here in the constructor the private auth service. We anyway need it in here for the logout. So if we got it in here, there we go, it should load, and we get back a token when we load the page. That is good news, because this will be very helpful for restoring the user session. So we don't have sessions, we just have the JWT. However, it kind of acts like the session. Okay, let's wrap up the dashboard page real quickly now, because then we can add our final functionality. So what we need on this page is the Angular router, so we can call our sign out and route back to the login. And I'm also gonna grabbing the user ID simply to display something on the dashboard. Now, we're not gonna build out the dashboard page with Tailwind together today, because we're already, I guess, at, how long is this video? I don't know. Oh, it's already almost close to 40 minutes, yeah. So let's just add a header bar now. I took this from the Tailwind UI page, I think. So it's a very common pattern. We got the login and we're on the dashboard. Can't actually go anywhere else, but you could use this as the base for your application if you wanted to. And then you would have some kind of main area below the header where we can display some kind of content. Actually pretty nice, pretty easy to set up. The only thing you might want to do is have some kind of inside module where you define the routing. So then here you would just define this main area and then put in another router outlet, and then let that router outlet be replaced by the actual routes, so you don't have to set up everything at the top level. However, that is just a small thing. We're able to log out. If we now reload the page, we're also going to see that the token from storage is null. However, now the problem comes. I am, of course, still able to go to that dashboard page. Okay, the dashboard page encounters a problem. Because get current user ID, yeah, we should probably be careful with that. We should probably add a question mark here. Then it would work, right? Yeah, then I'm able to get to the dashboard even without a token. So we now want to prevent access to pages with a certain functionality. And in the past, you would have used a guard for that. And we actually kind of still use a guard for that, but we can actually make this functional. So let's go back to the app routing. And what we're going to do is we want to add a function here called canActivate. And to canActivate, we previously had like an array with like the guard. You can generate a guard using ng. Do you have something here? Yeah. Just like this, ng generate guard, and then it would create a guard file here. It's kind of, yeah, it's not complicated to set up, but it's an additional file to manage and a bit of typing. So instead of doing this with a guard, we can now also do it within the service. But by the way, guard is totally fine. And if you check out one of my other videos, you're probably gonna see that I've used a guard in the past. But we can also add simply a new function to our authentication service. And within that function, I'm gonna inject directly the router, the Angular router, so I don't have to add this to the constructor actually. And we could do this this part, we could also do it right in here, but it looks kind of ugly. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna return the current user observable, and I'm filtering out undefined. I'm filtering out undefined because, as said before, this is the state where the application is not even initialized. So we don't know if there is a user or not. So we filter this value out, and this observable will only return once we got either a value of user data or null. And if we got a user, like if we get any kind of object back, we're gonna return true, which means the user is logged in. And in other case, we actually return a URL tree, which simply means we change our routing exactly to just slash. We could also return false and then handle the routing, but this kind of works better. Now with that in place, let's go back to the app routing. And in here, we now do the fancy stuff, functional guard using inject. Again, we directly inject our authentication service in here with this approach. And then call is logged in. So this is our new guard. And once we apply this, we should see that we are not able anymore to go to /dashboard. Yeah, to that page, definitely not, because it doesn't exist. And we're brought back to the login because we have no token. Let's try and sign in. Okay, I'm signed in, I'm here. Let's try refresh. And I still got access because I was able to load this token from storage. Again, let's try refresh, works, log out. Nope, no more access to dashboard. And that is how you can protect access to pages with a functional guard using Angular 15. Now, on top of that, I want to show you one more thing, because what you see in a lot of applications is if you are logged in and you go to the login page, you're actually brought into the inside area automatically. So we can use pretty much the same setup here and just add another function, which I'm going to call should log in. Using same setup, filtering out the undefined state, but if we're authenticated, we're actually going to do the opposite. We're going to create a URL tree with the inside area, the link to the dashboard. And if we are not authenticated, we return true because we allow access to the login page. And now with that in place, back to this, copy this, add this up here and change it to should log in. As a result, we are logged in. And if I try to navigate to the login, I'm actually always brought back to the inside area. So this actually can sometimes be a bit annoying on some pages where you really want to get to the whatever kind of page. However, in most cases, I feel like this is pretty nice. If I just want to work in the inside area, I don't want to do the login all the time again. And also, I can refresh on this page. It won't bring me to the inside page unless I'm signed in. So, dashboard page protected, registration and sign in working, and refreshing that page also works because we're loading the token from local storage. And that's, my friend, is everything for today's lesson on JWT authentication with Angular. Alright, And that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this quick example of building an Angular login with Tailwind and JWTs. And one last point is that it's not 100% way to make your application secure. Real security always happens at the API level, so you need to make sure your API endpoints are protected, there's no access to the database behind this without being authenticated and all that stuff. Everything we've done with Angular is just like the front end stuff. Yes, we always do this, but just keep in mind, real security happens at your back end. If you enjoyed it, please make sure you follow galaxies.dev and of course subscribe to this channel for more videos in the future, and I will hopefully catch you soon. So until then, happy coding, Simon.